Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith with the National Police Association, and this is the NPA report. I want to share with you today information about an organization that I recently learned about when I was at the CPAC Texas conference in Dallas, Texas. And it is such a huge issue facing not just America today, but frankly, every country in this world, and it doesn't get enough attention. And my guest today is a guy trying to do something about that in a very practical way. Eric Colton from Untrafficked, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So talk to me, what is Untrafficked?
Well, 3 years ago, when we really learned just about the brevity of the issue here, both in the United States and overseas, we conducted a tremendous amount of research. And at the time, I was operating a company where we did critical problem solving in the intelligence space, in the cybersecurity space. And so we had a cadre of military leaders and intelligence leaders with us. And we decided to take a really hard look into child sex trafficking in the United States. And what we found was absolutely an atrocity. And so we got together and continued to conduct a tremendous amount of research. And what we did is we landed on one truth. There is not enough collaboration with anti-trafficking agencies in the United States. They don't work with each other. They're operating in silos, and that's A. B, they often don't work with law enforcement, and the rules of engagement are in the United States are that the nonprofits have to work with law enforcement, especially when engaging a sex trafficking victim or their perpetrator. And so it's, we're a nation of laws and we have to involve law enforcement, and there's got to be a respectful process in which that's dealt with. You're a retired law enforcement officer, so you know better than anybody. And see, there was a lot of heart and a lot of good intentions and a lot of money being invested into this space, but there just wasn't not enough collaboration. And then B, there just wasn't enough good processes in place in order to be able to make a difference. Organized crime works because it's organized. We need to be more organized than organized crime. And so what I did was I put together a team of folks that ran intelligence agencies and that ran Special Operation Command of the United States in different sectors, and that also came from corporate leadership and also some nonprofit experience, and put them together. And what we did is we built 4 pillars, and those pillars are awareness, prevention, intervention, and restoration. And so rather than recreate the wheel, we really wanted to focus on how do we take and support existing organizations in order to be able to make them better. And so I'll start at the end first and work my way backwards. And so we have about 118 care facilities from coast to coast, including Hawaii, that we're in contact with. And so if there's somebody that is rescued from an operation, we'll have vetted these organizations and have the ability to be able to take them to an organization that's vetted. And then over the last 3 years, what we did is we did a lot of research, and we asked a lot of questions. We found out how they operated, and we realized that there was a great variance. So there's an issue because the continuum of care across the United States of America is not consistent. And so we discussed that internally. We sought consultants externally. We asked a number of questions to a lot of these different care facilities and tried to figure out what was wrong, where they needed help, and then how can they provide from coast to coast a continuum of care that addresses the physical needs, the mental needs, the emotional needs, and the spiritual needs of these kids so they can have a true restoration and heal. This is such an important thing because what gets stolen from them when they're trafficked for sex, when they are raped, you want to know the truth? They're raped over and over and over again. and it's a hard thing to talk about, and it's a hard thing, to focus on. But we just decided to take on this problem from several different perspectives. And that was one of the perspectives, is how do you make the restoration process better from coast to coast? And so we are really a servant leader in that space in order to be able to increase the quality of the continuum of care. And we're still working on that. That's a work in process. The second is intervention. And so we have created, I'll read this to you, but we deploy advanced technology, and we utilize deep intel capabilities and establish our very well established affiliate network in order to be able to be very effective in both tracking kids and tracking perpetrators. And so far, I'll read you these statistics. In 2022, so far, we have 548 arrests, and we have 190 children that have been recovered so far this year. And we got a call one day. This is a standout case for us, right around Houston, Texas, and 352 miles away. We rescued this girl in 5 hours and 31 minutes.
Wow.
From the time of abduction to the time of rescue. And they arrived 2 minutes before law enforcement showed up, and we provided law enforcement an intelligence report at the county of abduction to the county sheriff, and then the county where we knew that this perpetrator was going, because it was their residence, and based upon the way that they were driving and their driving history and the way that we were able to obtain this information legally, of course.
Right.
We were able to assist law enforcement in making this arrest and rescuing this girl. And it was before she was trafficked. And so, we sent that girl over to one of our care center affiliates, and then her and her mother engaged in family counseling through that program. And there's great progress that's there. But again, what would happen if we weren't there? I don't know. Could it have been another organization? Possibly. But I don't want to take that chance. You as a retired police officer, you don't think, well, I wonder, if another police officer would have been here or not. You have to act, and whether we're law enforcement or not, because I'm not law enforcement, we have an opportunity as a citizen of the United States and a human being to be able to help out other people when there's a need. And so we just simply responded. And so that's intervention, and the intervention division is going really well. And we're getting ready to automate that case building process in order to be able to support law enforcement even better. And so we work with the FBI, we work with HSI, and we work with state, local, and federal law enforcement all over the United States. And so that's the intervention side. The third pillar is the prevention side. So in continuing our operations, we have discovered that there's really nothing in existence that deals with prevention. There's nothing that teaches situational awareness to families. There's no way that or program that's really focused on how do you facilitate a healthy conversation between a parent and a child, and having the ability to be able to educate these parents, in a way that's pleasing to them. B, you're not telling them what to do, because if we do, we'll get a lot of backlash there. I don't know if you want to be told how to raise your kids. I would probably find an offense to it, especially in today's day and age. And so we really try to figure out how to make this palatable, how to make it effective, and in our desire to equip families on how to be able to protect their children from these predators that are out there.
And let me ask you something, Eric, because I think most parents who are watching this or take a look at your website say, wow, that's not me. That's not my family. That's not my kids. This doesn't happen in my neighborhood, my town, my state. Talk about that a little bit, because I think there's a misunderstanding that kids who get trafficked, come from just very poor families where the parents aren't paying attention, single family homes. And that's not true. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Last night we had two girls. One of them was abducted from Columbia, Maryland, which is the highest income earning neighborhood in town in Maryland, and then Silver Spring, Maryland, as well. And Silver Spring, Maryland is right out of Washington, D.C. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And so this happens all over the place. Those that are in desire of having sex with teens and children, they don't care how much money your parents make. They have a desire, and sometimes a very specific desire. Sometimes they want a 13-year-old girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, and sometimes they want an 8-year-old boy with brown hair and brown eyes. They sometimes have these specific desires. Porn addiction is a huge reason why this happens, and that doesn't happen. That's, it's not correlated to what's going on at the border. That's a totally different conversation. It's a disaster, but it's a conversation nonetheless. But it happens everywhere. And there are people who have sexual addictions everywhere. And there are people who have perverted sexual addictions all over the place. And so, again, if we're trying to stop every single predator that's out there, it's literally playing whack-a-mole. And the police, they don't have the resources and the bandwidth. We certainly don't. The U.S. government hasn't figured that one either, because the problem just perpetuates. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And so how do we reduce the demand? How do we reduce the supply? And so while we are trying to figure out ways to reduce the demand and try to build, systems and procedures or classes or some type of therapy to get people to want to stop having sex with children, we decided to go ahead and stop the supply. And what we did is we created the Guardian program. And so we have the Untrafficked Guardians. And here's a graphic of what the Guardian Handbook looks like. You're going to be the first people to see it ever. This is brand new. It's coming out in the next couple of weeks, and you can order it online. We're going to send it to you free of charge. There's an online ebook that you can read that's there. And then in a couple of months, it's actually going to be narrated to you with a bunch of actors. This book was written from the perspective of the child. Moms and dads, guardians, aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, this is my world. And this is what's happening. And when I'm on my cell phone and I'm on social media, I get messages from strangers that are sometimes 40 and 50 years old that are using photographs of somebody who's the age of my peer. And they're acting interested in me. And I'm so young and I don't know what's going on. Moms and dads, can you please help me? And not only does it build an equipping mechanism for the parents on how to be able to stop grooming, it also rebuilds the nuclear family. It builds intimacy within parents and children so that they can have good, meaningful conversations that are there. It's done in a way to where it's very appropriate. It's done through cartoons, not people. And so we wanted to really limit the hardness of it, because the problem is so grotesque that most just don't want to even consider that it exists. Like you said earlier, they just would rather be in denial than have to face the fact that they somehow have to deal with a conversation with their kid about protecting them from these 500,000 predators online at any time, increasing at an alarming rate, growing every single day.
this has also, unfortunately and bizarrely, become political, where we have some people in, whether it's academia or psychology or even the medical profession, where they want to talk about minor addicted persons as opposed to sexual predators and predators who are only interested in children. And again, I really believe that most people have a very limited understanding of this type of problem. So it sounds like the Guardian program is able to break through that politicization. Am I correct?
Yeah, we don't want to make it political at all. We don't want to make it about politics. We don't want to make it about race. We don't want to make it about gender. We have guardians that are African American and Cuban, that are Hispanic and Polynesian, that are Caucasian, from across the board, different ages and different ethnicities. And so, anybody that any type of a family that looks at this, they can become comfortable with it. They can identify with it, and then they can follow it. And going through page by page, it's grooming via social media. It's grooming while children are playing online video games. We got a call the other day, and there was a parent where their 12-year-old child asked if they can go play Pokemon Go with a person where they're playing an online game with. And we looked very quickly and found out that person was not 12 years old. That person was a 42-year-old male. And I don't know why. We don't try to infer why that person wanted to meet a 12-year-old male at a park, but we can only assume that it was not for a good reason. And so we just simply let them know the facts, that your son is playing with somebody who's identifying as a 12-year-old, but they're not 12. And they probably want to report them to the police. And so that's what happened. And these things happen all the time, every single day, in every single neighborhood, everywhere across the United States, right? And so grooming via a video game, grooming at school. There are guys and gals that pull other kids into bathrooms and want to have their way with them because they're either addicted to porn, or it's a dare, or they're bullies. Whatever the case is, there's trafficking going on. Schools, private schools, public schools, you name it, it's all over the place. There's grooming going on in shopping malls where adults are targeting children, and they hey, I think your mom's car is outside. I'm one of your neighbors. I think I just saw her, go outside and get her. And next thing you know, the kid is snatched in a van and trafficked somewhere, either across the United States or shipped overseas. And these are things that we want to bring to the attention of parents, to be able to have these good, meaningful, and caring and sympathetic, empathetic conversations with the kids, so that we can get the points across and there can be movement from foolishness to wisdom.
And what, Eric, you guys are tackling such a difficult issue. And, that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you. We just have a few seconds left. Tell people where they can find out more about Untrafficked and what you're trying to do.
Sure. Yeah. They can find out about Untrafficked at untrafficked.org. And go on there, click there. If you want to become a guardian, all you have to do is put in your first name, your last name, and your email address, and it will give you access to the portal. And in the portal, you're going to be able to find the resources needed to be able to equip you and equip your families. Yep, there's videos that are on there. You're going to enjoy those. Some of them are awareness. Some of them are testimonies of those that have been survivors of trafficking. Others are figureheads within our community that are going to challenge you to take a stand and untraffic America with us. And so we need all the help that we can get. We want to equip communities so we can all work together. Because if we're organized, we can beat organized crime. If we're organized, we can go ahead and put a huge dent in untraffic America, one home at a time, one neighborhood at a time, and one community at a time.
This has been such a fantastic conversation. And Eric, we appreciate you spending time with us. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.